Good morning, and welcome to our 2026 series of WTH webinar training sessions. We're glad to see so many of you joining us for our second series. My name is Leslie, and I will be your moderator. We invite you to navigate to our website, wthgis.com, and click on the banner, which will take you to our webinar menu page, where you can explore the topics we are to cover today and on future dates. We're doing something a little different with our first 3 sessions this time, as we plan on breaking down our topics into 3 one-hour mini sessions. Within each hour, we will be presenting for 40 minutes, reviewing any questions for 10 minutes, and then ending with a 10-minute break. The topic for our second webinar in this series is ThinkGIS Editor Training, which we will break down to cover editing review and field management in the first hour, linking documents to layers in the second hour, and lastly, feature forms and best editing practices. If there is something that isn't making sense or you would like information on, we invite you to post a question in our Q&A tab that you can access in the Teams toolbar above. From there, you can submit a question in the side discussion bar. We will also be opening up the mics in the 10-minute Q&A of each hour to provide you the opportunity to ask questions in person if preferred. After we are done here today, you will receive an email that will have 2 things. First is a survey link where we ask that you provide feedback on how we did here today. On that survey will also be a section where you can request more in-depth training on some features we may not have time to cover in today's session. If you would like more information, please leave a brief description of what you would like to review so we can have the appropriate team member reach out to you. The second thing to watch for in that email will be a link to a recording of today's session. We've had some users unable to access that link in the past, so we want to be sure that you know that link will also be available on our website webinar registration page to access at any time, bookmark for review at your own pace, or use as a tool when training new employees. Now I'll turn the session over to Corey. Corey is the GIS consultant and customer service tech with over 8 years of experience specializing in land information and public safety work. Go ahead, Corey.
Good morning, everyone. In this thing, pull up my map. We are going to start with some editing review. I'd like to start with talking about how to lock your layers for editing. It's kind of the first step to anything you do. So we're going to go up here to Tools and Show Map Editing Tools. So this will show you your tools that you can use to do editing. And then whenever we click that, it will also pop up this Lock Layers for Editing. Whenever we are working on something, I highly suggest you do not hit this Select All here at the top. Normally, whenever you're editing, I like to have 1 or 2 layers locked, not multiple layers whenever you're doing something. That's an easy way to manipulate data that you don't realize you're moving. You move a point or a line, you may be grabbing an area or some other data at the same time and moving it. So it's easy to accidentally move something or change something, delete something if you have that select all. So we normally like to just have one thing locked. For now, I'm going to go ahead and lock my community gardens and my daycare layer. I'm going to be using that here in a little bit. So I'll hit OK. So there are other ways to lock your layers for editing. You can go to the layer settings up here. And then if we expand out like the base map here, you'll see this edit lock column. So if you want to lock a layer, like we can lock our edit addressing, you just click the little lock, edit, just turn it back off again. So that's how I normally lock and unlock my layers. Just because I'm moving in and out of different layers, I'll just pop up the layer settings, lock them on and off. The other thing you want to watch for is this edit select column. Sometimes it's easy to accidentally click that when you're clicking this button, and that makes it so you can't click on something on the map. So I'm going to turn off the edit select on the addresses to show you how. You can see I'm trying to click on these addresses and they will not select. It's just wanting to select those parcels. So if we turn the select back on, now we can click on the addresses. So that's a pretty common thing to accidentally click that edit select. So just kind of something to watch out for. And then another way you can lock layers, if you're in the index and already working on something in here, and you want to lock a layer because you're wanting to move things from one layer to another, rather than having to go to the tools, lock layers, or the layer settings, you can just right click lock layers for editing here, and it pulls up that same menu we had before. So you just click on any of these layers on the left, lock layers for editing, and that pops up. So that's kind of the three main ways to lock layers. There are some tools that will automatically lock the layers, like whenever you export a shapefile or whenever you're doing address editing, the address tool will automatically lock your address layer for you whenever you do that. So you don't have to lock it before, but I normally do just for convenience on whenever I'm editing. So the first thing I want to review in editing review is going to be editing some like existing data. So you already have a point. I don't know if I'm not going to do very much placing or drawing lines or placing points. I'm going to mostly go over here, just working on your existing data. So if we go down here to this 219 East Rhonda, and we wanted to change that to a different number, let's say we wanted to make that 217, you can just edit that up. You know what? I don't have that layer locked, do I? Let's go up here and lock our layer. So now if we double click, so we want to change that 219 to 217. You'll see that I can hit that, hit OK, and hit redraw, and that'll change. That's a question I have a lot of times, is someone will have an address, maybe it's an old address that's placed and they want to change it to a new number because they're reusing that address point. That's an easy way to adjust that. The other thing that you can do from this menu whenever you open up the feature form is this wrench has a lot of different tools here. So we're not going to go over all of these today, but we are going to go through some of these later. I just wanted to point out the little wrench. The big one that I use a lot is the delete. So this is a way to delete a feature off the map. Instead of using the delete tool up here, whenever you use that tool, you get rid of the feature that's on the map right here, but you don't get rid of it out of the index. So that address layer, that address point would still be listed here in the index. So what we want to do is use the wrench, and whenever we delete this feature, make sure you want to delete this feature. Yes. And that will actually get rid of that feature completely off of the map, out of the index and off the map. And that's a good way to delete things. Whenever you use the delete tool, you're going to have things in the index that are still lingering. They're not going to probably cause any problems for most of the users to have that data, except it can still show up if they do a search in the index, and then they'll wonder why that address point doesn't exist. If they try to locate it, it won't locate it because the geometry has been deleted. So I'm going to do a redraw here. So another thing you can do with our little wrench is you can copy or move a feature to another layer. So if you look over here, our ABC Daycare is highlighted in green, and green is the layer for my community gardens. You can see our Town of Dexter Green Thumbs and our Town of Dexter Garden Guild. We have two little community gardens here, and then somehow this daycare got put on that layer. So if we open that up, you'll see this window here. I'll talk about it real quick. If you click on something, and like this is two areas, the parcel layer and the daycare layer, you'll see that we have the choice to choose which we want to open. So I just double clicked inside the area here. The map is saying, hey, there's two areas there. Which one do you want to open? So I'm going to choose our, you can see it says community garden and ABC Daycare. So we can know that that is probably in the wrong layer. So we're going to use our little wrench. We're going to move this feature to another layer. And then we're going to choose our daycare layer. We'll click OK. And then do a redraw. Now that turns yellow. So that's a way if you end up with, I was originally going to do an example with like meters. If you were adding meters and you're like, oh, there's a valve right here, you can move that valve back over to the meters or the meters back to the valve if you have the wrong feature. And that's where we're going to be talking next, not next section, but in a little bit about the current layer and current feature. And that's where you can kind of make sure you don't make those mistakes in the future. So the other thing you can do to edit existing data is you can use the index. So I'm going to go to the index here. And then I'm going to lock our address ranges. So I'm going to do an unselect all to get rid of all the things I have selected and just select our address ranges. That's kind of what I consider best practices. Only have one layer locked. That prevents you from accidentally messing with data that you don't realize you're moving or deleting. So we're going to do that. And then so change has been layered. Oh, I'd made some changes to that daycare layer. I hadn't hit save yet. So the map's warning me. So I'm going to hit yes to save. And that's probably for the community garden layer and the address layer because I deleted one. So that's where the map tries to save you from losing data. I should have hit file save. That's always a good practice whenever you're editing. But so now we're on our address range, and you can see here I have 150 south instead of 150 and then just a W or an S. So there's a couple ways you can edit things in here. You can, did I get that locked? Yeah, address ranges are locked. So you can edit text right in the index here. So let's do a search. I'm going to just search for those 150 souths. So there's a couple ways you can edit this. There's this little button down here, edit text. You can click that, type, go right into here, and just clear out what we don't want. Now, there is a warning here. There's no undo for any editing that you do inside the index like this. So if you do a mass change, that I'm going to show you next, or you use the little edit text button, and once you've changed it, it's changed. So just be careful using these tools. Make sure that's why I like to use the search to only have the points that I need to do. One thing interesting in the index, you can do a select like multiple holding shift. Yeah. So you can select multiple, you can select a couple, or you can right click and hit select all, or you can do a control A. There we go. I was hitting the wrong button on my keyboard. There's a function button. But if you hold control, you can select just two of them. So if I didn't want to do that 150 south for some reason, I can select those, or I can go ahead and select all three. And then I'm going to do a set field value for selected features. So this will allow me to just type in what I want to mass change these all at once. So 150 south and OK. And that changes all of those. One thing to know, if you have a pick list set up, you can actually use that in the drop down there to be able to make sure your data's good. We're going to talk about pick lists later, whenever we're talking about some of the feature details, so we can go over that a little bit. But that is something nice, is that if you do have a pick list set up, it'll help you be able to pick the exact way you have it written. You'll be able to see the other examples. So let's hit close there. So there is this edit text checkbox down here, and you can edit right from the address ranges in the normal index. I don't like that as much. I prefer to use the search first to get me drilled down, because there could be one of these 150 souths hiding down here, depending on how this is sorted. So if this was sorted by direction, you'll see that those 150 souths are going to be hiding different places possibly. So we want to use the, I like to use the search to search for those 150 with the misspelling. One thing with the search, I'll point out, I think I'm sure we've showed this before, but if you hit this drop down, you can see all of the different unique IDs. So if you wanted to find a particular one, you can just scroll up and down here and find that. So like you can see here, there's actually an Anita without Anita Street. So we can hit search, and we can say, oh, there's an Anita without Anita Street. We can hit edit text. Turn the edit text off, which you do have to turn that off whenever you're done. That is a quick way to be able to edit something. You already have existing data and you're just wanting to make a change. And you can edit any of these fields. But you could choose this left to right, your range data, community, whatever you needed to change. So let's close that. Let's see what is next. Oh, one thing you can do from the index. So let's say we were wanting to look at one of these that had a spelling error, like maybe this Anita Street. You can hit view record. That'll pull up the form and you can actually type in here. So like, let's say that was already just Anita. We can just type it there. So that allows you to be able to see the form when you're editing it rather than using the edit text. So I find that actually more convenient sometimes. That way I can double check all the other fields are filled in the way they should be. Then there's also, you can do like locate alls or you can do locate. I use the locate a lot. So I want to look at that one oddball maybe that wasn't spelled out properly. And I'm wanting to know, is there a duplicate there? Is there a reason why there was an error? That's a nice thing is you can zoom in, take a look at something and try to figure out why it had a problem that it did. Those, let me scroll my notes here. So the next thing I want to talk about is the current layer, current feature. So this is something that you can change which layer you're working on. So let me lock my water layers. I'm going to turn on my water meters and water valves, and I'm going to turn off my address ranges. And again, the map, because I hadn't hit file save, I'm being a bad example here. It's going to ask if I want to save. I'm going to say yes. So we have our meters and valves, and you'll see up here at our current layer, if we select meters, and then I hit new feature, I'm going to create a new feature here. So I'm just going to put in some data, comment, house, okay. And then I place a point, and I'm going to say that this meter is over here. I'm going to place it. So if I think, oh, I need to put a valve right here on this line, if I hit new feature right now, I'm going to create another water meter. So I have to select here, go water valves, and then new feature. We'll give it an ID, and okay. And then we can place our point, and we can place it. So this is something I'm going to talk about more later, but this is something that you may see. I left it in here. I forgot it was going to pop up like this, but I had left the settings turned on. The topology layer will actually automatically split your line whenever you place. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's actually like the next little piece here. But what this will do is it will, whenever you place this, it'll split that into two pieces. And it's basically just warning me, hey, this is going to be happening. Is this okay? We're going to go ahead and hit yes. So that's something, a pop-up you may see once in a while. It's a lot like those pop-ups where the save. Most of the time you're going to want to hit yes, but it's a good idea to read and see what it says to make sure you're not manipulating some data whenever when you're doing something. Anytime you have a pop-up like that, you don't know what it means, or you have a question, feel free to call us. A lot of times it's a quick, easy call we can do over the phone. We don't always have to remote in for something like that, and we can talk you through, what your process is and say, yep, that's going to be a yes on that, and then it won't pop up again. So I'll show you here. I'm going to make another valve, and we'll place a point. We'll put it down here, and you'll see it doesn't pop up this time. And that's basically the tool is just not warning me this time about changing that line. So it's already locked the layer for editing, and you'll see here that our water lines are locked. So that's another way that the map will automatically lock layers for you to basically be able to edit that data for you. So that's something you want to watch out, because if I wanted to move this valve right now, we use the move tool. If I move this valve, it's also going to move my line. So that's something about whenever you are dealing with your data, if you have two things locked and you're only wanting to manipulate the valves, right now it's going to be moving that line also. So I'm going to do an undo so we get that back where it was. Let me see. So to do different things, you can do this current feature, and the current feature lets you see the same, like you can see all the different features in here. And like, let's say we deleted this 111 feature off of the map with the delete tool, it would still show up here and it would allow us to replace it. So let me do that real quick. So we're going to delete, I think I'll delete this one down here I created. Yes. So we'll see that that one is gone. And that was that 567. So if we come back up here, you'll see it's still in this list. We can click it, grab our point, and I don't know if there's a snap there. I'll snap it there. So now there's our new valve placed. So that's what this current feature. The other use of that, let me lock. I forgot to hit save again. I think that's going to be a normal thing for today. Community gardens, I'm going to lock that one. And let's say the Town of Dexter Green Thumbs is going to expand into this empty lot right here. Instead of dragging these lines and doing that area and going across this alley, which they maybe don't actually have access to, we are going to come up here, pick our current feature, and you'll see that this is something I wanted to point out. The top one will highlight blue, the bottom one doesn't, but it gets you this black box. So if we click the top one and we hit OK, it'll change to the Garden Guild. If we click the bottom one, it doesn't highlight blue, but it does select it. It'll change to the Green Thumbs. So that's kind of a quirk just for you to know for the visual, is that it doesn't select that bottom one. The other ones will select blue, and then that bottom one, if you have it selected, it'll just have that black kind of dark box, just to kind of help you see what you're selecting. So now we've got this selected, and we're going to just use the copy tool to copy this parcel area. And yes. And what this does for us is now the garden, not the Garden Guild, the Green Thumbs, whenever we select on that area, you'll see it highlights both. So that's the same feature, but drawn in two areas. So if you were wanting to do this, like let's say this club had 10 gardens spread across the whole town, whenever you wanted to do a locate all of the Garden Guild or the Green Thumbs, whenever you do a locate, you'll see it would highlight them in orange. So you could see them all highlighted. And the nice thing is that's a nice visual, like so that whenever you click on one, you can see the other ones highlighted around. For printing and other things, sometimes it makes sense for these to be split apart. But most of the time, it seems like most users prefer it so that whenever they click on one, they can see all the other ones. Kind of keeps everything tied together. That way you're only managing one feature that way. There's certain things that you don't want to do that way, but this is one way you can make it so then these are tied together. So let's say the Garden Guild is going to expand to this northern area. They're going to encroach in on the Green Thumbs. We go to the Garden Guild, and then we can use the copy tool again. So now we do a redraw. So we can see these areas are green right next to each other. It's hard to tell which one is which. So if we click on our community garden layer for over here, so that's the Garden Guild, and you can see it highlights those two, but doesn't highlight these two. So that's one thing you can do with the current feature. If you're wanting to change the current feature quickly, though, you can actually use any of the drawing tools to select it. So let's say we were going to draw a freehand area, and then we can middle click, which is the scroll wheel, on the other one of the other areas. So like this is going to choose the Green Thumbs, or if I middle click inside of this area, you'll see it changes to the Garden Guild. So I'm going to middle click here, and then I'm just going to go draw like in this backyard, just to show the example. So now if we click on that area, you'll see those three highlight. So if I go grab my tool again, I middle click up here. So that's the Garden Guild. I'm just going to go down here. I'll do a redraw. And then if I click here, you'll see that those areas highlight. So that's a quick way to be able to jump back and forth between your two areas. I use it a lot whenever I'm editing like an ESN layer where you maybe have the city and the county, and it's like it ebbs and flows in and out of the different parcels. And sometimes you need to like add another parcel to the ESN. That allows you to be able to click on the existing area, draw it in, then click on the other area and draw that piece in. Kind of allows you just to jump back and forth without having to use the interface up here. Now I'm going to go ahead and lock my valves again. Actually, we'll do meters. I'll show you in the meters, you can actually do a search inside of here. So this search bar right here, the search for layer and search, that's actually this left side searching for your actual individual. You want to use this big search button up here. So we're going to do, and I'm going to do like in the address, I'm going to say Jason Street. So I want to see all the ones from Jason Street. So here's all the Jason Street ones that are like different features that already exist. And then I can click on that one and you'll see it actually highlights on the map. So if I move my search thing over here, you can see that one highlights and that one highlights. If one of these was deleted, it'll actually have a little exclamation point. So let me delete one. Delete. And redraw. And I think I need to do a file save. Let me relock it just to make sure. My little exclamation point isn't showing it. Maybe it just shows up in the index. Forget how that shows up. Anyway, so this one is missing now. We want to find that one. We can go to our water meters, go to our search. If we had a lot of, if we had a lot more features, I've kept my features pretty small here. We can do our Jason Street. And then we're going to say that was 539. So we're going to click OK and OK. So it changes to that one. And we can place our point. So the current feature, not something I use a lot to change back and forth between current features. That's mostly to fix a missing item. So something got deleted off the map. It's already existed. Everything's already typed in. Go find it in the current feature and place it. I also use it whenever I'm switching back and forth between like two areas, like an ESN layer, drawing in something. Also the same thing with these garden guilds. If they were like had a big plot and you were trying to draw out 4 or 5 different groups and it was like alternating or something, you could use that current feature to switch back and forth to be able to draw those in. Mostly just wanted to point out the what that did and show what it was. I've had people ask before, so I just thought it'd be something good to talk about. So next I want to talk about those topology rules. So that was with this line automatically splitting. Like whenever we drew this valve in down here, we click on this line, you'll see that line highlights, but it stops at the valve. And then this line highlights, stops at the valve and stops at the T here. So the way that's set up in our layer settings here, you'll see on our water lines, hydrants, meters, and valves that has these topos highlighted. So let's click on our water lines. And this is one of those things that there are certain things in the settings here that the layer has to be locked to be able to change it. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. It'll automatically lock that for us. And then here's our topology rules. So the big thing is the checking the auto split. That's kind of what the tool, in my opinion, is the most powerful part of it, is allows you to be able to place a point, automatically splits at the line. And then the group, what that does is if you have gas lines, I'll show you here, there's lots of choices for these. So you can have grass, hydrology, electrical, railroads, roads, all these different things. You can have your gas marked as gas, your electrical marked as electrical. So if you accidentally place a point on the electrical line, it won't automatically split on that electrical. It only manipulates things in its group. So that's why everything is in water here. I'm going to go ahead and lock these other edits. So you can see as I click down through these. So this is the hydrant. It's locked for water. It's got the auto split in water. And the third one in water. So this is just something you can set up whenever you are creating a new layer. A lot of times whenever we help you guys set up layers, if you're working on utilities like this, we'll have this set up for you automatically. But this is something you can add to your layers if you're doing a new layer to track something, and that can help you get some of this kind of automatic features to happen. So the next, scroll here. Leslie said we have 2 questions. Let's go ahead and do that before we move on to our field management. I don't know if you want to read them out or text them to me, Leslie, either way.
I'm here. I know one of the things we discussed early on about the selectability of layers. Something we get calls on often are when users go clicking around the map, sometimes they'll get squares with slashes through them. Can you explain what that is and how to manage that?
So a lot of times that's going to be your aerial photography. I don't know if I can get one to select here easily. I can probably just choose one and make it zoom to it. So you're talking about like that?
That's it.
That is the aerial photography being selectable. So like if you're clicking around, let me do a redraw here. I'll see my borders. Like let's say you clicked right here and there's a parcel. I've stripped out a bunch of parcels just to make the map simpler. But there's a parcel over here you want to click on, you try to click on it, and you end up with this giant box with a slash. That's just the aerial photography you're selecting. If you come up here and you turn off that select, and that's where aerial photography is the main one, you'll have that off. You'll see I have it off on my zip codes also. Even though I have the layer off, sometimes I'll turn a zip code layer on just so I can see that border, but I don't maybe want to select it because it's maybe right on a road center line and I'm trying to click on the road center line. So that's another one. Sometimes your townships or other big boundary layers, you can have those turned off just to keep you from accidentally clicking them. But yeah, aerial photography is the common one that you'll see. And now if we do a redraw, you can see I can't click anything. Oop, didn't mean to zoom. Can't click anything in here. So that's what that is.
Perfect. Another question we had brought to our attention is this particular user says every time the county updates the address layer, all your changes disappear. Can you discuss the importance of layer ownership and both for local and network setups?
Yeah, so layer ownership, that is something that's set up in sync and it's normally managed on our side. If it's on a network, there may be a server that's syncing, so it depends on who has access to that. One thing to talk about, there is the ability to add a password to your layers. So if you're on a network and you are the only one that should be making changes and you have someone else accidentally or doing the select all whenever they lock layers, you can set a password to keep people from manipulating it. The big thing to know is you need to know what layers you are the owner of. That can be checked whenever you do a sync and there's an upload page. That's kind of the quickest way. The other way is to give us a call and say, hey, I did an edit on the address layer and it's gone. We can check and say, oh, you're on your laptop. You need to do that on your desktop or something like that. I know that's a common confusion is that the only one computer or one registration on the map can own a layer. So it's important to know what layers that you own and what can be edited, because let's say like the zip codes would be a good example. There's a good chance that no one in the county owns that. It may be something that WTH imported for you from the state and we own. You go in and say, hey, I want to add a little note to the zip codes to say that, this town, the post office for this zip code is in this other town type of thing. Well, then you go to sync and it deletes all that for you because it's saying, hey, the file on our server is the definitive source and you've changed it and our program does not care. It's just like going to override it. Answer your question, Leslie?
Yes. And another thing that was brought to my attention is the importance of layer ownership through registration numbers. Each map has its own registration number. So, we try not to have duplicates, and it's important to know which registration, like Corey discussed, you may have one map on your laptop, one on your desktop. It's important to know which has the ability to do what. That was it. If you want to resume.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to touch on, and this is good because I didn't expect to spend a lot of time on these, is just some of the different fields that you can add to things. So let's look at our water meters. So to get to this extra more, you can click, we should make this a little wider. There's a little more column right here. But to get to that quicker, or the way I do it all the time, is I just right click. So if you right click on any of your layers, you're going to get to the more section of that layer. And then we're going to go to layer format. That was basically just asking, do I want to save? Again, I forgot to save. But there's a lot of different types of fields you can add. So I'm going to hit an add, and I'm going to do a let long field. And to choose that, you're going to go to field type. You're going to come down here to calculated coordinates. And then there's a couple choices even inside of here. You can do decimal degrees, decimal minutes, degrees, minutes, seconds, the native coordinates. So that is going to be your northing easting if you're on a state plane map. And then you can do latitude and longitude separated out into two different pieces. I normally just do a single one if I'm just wanting to like have that data, or I'm wanting to be able to use it to go into like Google Maps to look at something there, or I need to send it to somebody. It's normally just easier for me to have it in one. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose the decimal degree. That seems to be kind of the standard most people want. So hit OK. Close. And if I do a redraw here and I click on a meter, you'll see here that we have our latitude and longitude on the left, or if I open up the form, you can see our latitude and longitude there. That could be, sorry, I got the lat long reverse there. I forgot what order it came in. And you can actually change that if you need that latitude and longitude to be flipped for a piece of software. Maybe you're exporting your data out in a Excel or a text file, and you need to import that into something and it's expecting them to be flip-flop. That is something you can change. We can change. I don't know if that's something that customers can change quickly, but it is something we can help change if you need that flip-flopped. But some other cool features or fields that you can add. Go back to like format. Let's say you wanted to combine like two fields. So you wanted to have the ID and the address layer all in one. So I'm just going to call it a cat for this concatenation field. And what this allows you to do is, let's do our ID, and then I'm going to do a dash, and then our address, and OK. So what this is going to do, that's how we can add these fields. You hit add field. You can choose which fields that are in the layer, and then you can type any other text you want. You can type anything here. So I'm just going to put a dash there, and OK, and OK, and close. So this would again would be something where you maybe need something concatenated, because that is the way your form has it written, and you want that on there whenever you print these or you send it to another person. Maybe you like to have it broke out for management, just quicker and easier management, but so maybe someone needs it in the 5- and then the address, or maybe you have the name, so you need 5- and then the person's name there. So you can kind of combine something that's already in the map in those layers. One thing to note, this does have to be below the fields that exist. So if this was above, it wouldn't fill in. So that's just something else to think about. The other cool thing you can do with like your water lines is we can do a length. So we can do a calculated length, do it in feet, meters, or miles, and you can tell it how many decimal places. So I'm going to go ahead and do like 1 decimal place in feet. OK, and close. Let's do a redraw. So now whenever we click on this water line, you can see it's 627 2/10. To click on this one, if I click on the right one, you can see that one's 24.9. So that's something you can add to your fields, your features, I mean. And then whenever you do like an Excel print, so if we go to our water lines, you could print this to Excel and then sum up all of those values, and then you would know how many miles or how many feet, depending on how you want to write it into your form, how much water lines you have. Let me see if there's any other ones. There's one more thing that I want to show you inside of here. Something we're going to be touching on later, but the long labels. So this area should normally be filled out with something that's useful. The ID isn't maybe the most useful. Water lines maybe aren't the best example of this. Let me switch to meters. You can see I have ID and address. And that just helps you identify the features whenever they pop up here on the left side, or whenever you do an index locate all, you can, or locate a couple of them, you can then identify those features individually. So that's something to watch out for. And then the sort by first number of fields down here at the bottom, you can use that to help you whenever you're making new features. That is what changes if it thinks there's a duplicate. So if you have that set to 1, it's only going to look at the ID field on here. So if I create a new one and I create a number 7 ID or again, and I make a second number 7, it's going to say, hey, that's a duplicate. Do you want to change that? But if you have that set to 2, it would look at the ID and the address. So if I accidentally made 2 with the same ID but different addresses, it's going to let me do that because it sees those as totally separate features. So that's something to kind of watch on how you have that set, like which one you which way you want to have that set. A lot of times for something like this where I'm wanting to track those IDs, I'm going to have it set on 1. For addresses, I would normally have it set for the address number all the way through the road name, all the possible features, because you're not normally going to have the same address with the exact number, same name, and everything. So that's where it would want it. I would want it to point me out that duplicate, but there's a good chance there's a 101 main and a 101 state street. So that's where you'd want to have that set. Are we out of time, Leslie?
We'll see if there are any further questions. We haven't had any pop up. I think we're in the process of getting the mics opened. So if anyone does have any questions at this point, feel free to type them in the Q&A and we will be on the watch for that.
While we're waiting on that, let me lock my addresses. One new field that we've added is a date time field. And this is in a month, day, year, hour, minute, second, or you can do year first. And this is something that we added specifically for NG911, but it's also helpful if you're just wanting a date and time added to whenever you create something. So you can have it so then whenever you do a new feature, autofill new record with current date and time. So every time you do it, you can also have this so it auto updates after a feature change. So if you want to keep track of whenever something was updated last, so that would be moved on the map, anything in the form changed, or any kind of manipulation basically of the data, it would automatically update the date and time. So that's a cool feature that we just added recently. That's something I believe was 446 update. So that's something that's pretty cool that we can do that auto update after the change. So you can keep track of something. Super handy for your, utilities, for your addressing, anything like that, where you're constantly making changes and you want to be able to see when that was updated last. So, any questions, Leslie?
You mentioned 446. We have some users who don't know how they know which version they're on. Where do you find that information?
So at the top of your map, it'll show you there's actually 2 handy things up here. Let me get out of this. So it's a little darker. Your ThinkGIS, and then 446, and then these other numbers aren't super important. I tell people that normally whenever we send out an email to tell people, hey, there's a new version, we'll tell you exactly what version should be there. And then as we roll out new versions, these other numbers at the back will step up. But the 446 is kind of how we will talk to someone, a customer, like, oh, are you on 446? Maybe they're having a weird error or they're missing a tool that their coworker has. That's where you can look. Then the other thing nice up here is you can see where your map opens up. So you can see my map is in the C drive, ThinkGIS folder. Then there's a Corey County, and then the CoreyCounty.tgm. So that allows you to see what TGM file, which is kind of like I described it as like your Word document. This is all of your display settings. That is the file I'm looking at. And that lets you see if you are looking at your local map or if you have a network map also, which we have some dispatch centers that have both. So they're working off the network for every day. But then if the network would go down for whatever reason, they can switch to a local map. Some users do the same thing with their laptop. Maybe they have a map that they can, when they're out in the field, they can look at things, but whenever they get back to the office, they're using the network map that other people are editing things, and they don't have to sync their map like every day to see those changes type of thing.
Perfect. There aren't any other questions. We did open up the mics, so if anybody would like to ask a question in person, feel free to. As usual, otherwise the Q&A is open if you don't want to chat. So
While
we
we're
got about
waiting
5 more
on,
minutes.
if anybody jumps in, one thing you can add to your layers, this has actually been in here for a little bit. Don't know if we've ever talked about any of our trainings, but the long string up here is the GUID for the layer. And then if you want to, you can actually add a GUID, and that's just a unique ID for each feature. So you can hit an add GUID down here. That's going to add a unique ID for each feature. And what that can help you with is if you take a layer, you break it into like 4 pieces and give it to 4, like let's say you had interns in your office. You split the layer into 4 pieces, gave each intern something to work on. Whenever you bring it back in, that will help you be able to verify that there aren't any duplicates. It also helps you be able to track where that feature came from, things like that. So the GUIDs, that's just something we've added recently to help be able to have a unique ID for each feature. A lot of other GIS software uses that as kind of like the gold standard of making sure you don't have duplicates, or if you move data from one database to another database and then back, you're not adding a new feature. You can just update the current feature. So that's something that we can add if you're needing that. Some external software may need a unique ID just to go off of, so it's just something handy to have. Any questions, comments?
And feel free to unmute your mics to ask any questions if you'd like. But no, I think we're good so far.
Okay, so just to go over some of these other feature fields, I'm just going to hit news here so we can talk about some of the different ones. So the text, integer, decimal, that's just a data type thing. Most of the time that's set up the first time and you don't need to manipulate it on your data whenever it's maybe brought in from a shapefile or something. Most everything's going to be text in general. The date is like a normal just date field that you've had for years. The yes, no is super handy. If you just need something that's just yes, no, and it just gives you a drop down to be able to choose those. One of my favorites on the uses is the calculated area. I use that a lot with parcels, and I'll have that on my trace layer and on my parcels. And that just helps me when I'm looking at a deed to be able to say, the deed says 3 acres and I'm looking at this parcel and it's 6. It's like, well, that's a little big. I'm going to keep clicking around because maybe the deed's not real clear on which parcel it's talking about. And then I can try to zone in from there. It's also helpful whenever I'm doing my trace layer. When I draw it in, I've drawn in that deed. And then I say, the deed says 6 acres. Mine's only coming in 4. What did I miss? Did I cut off an area? Did I miss some calls? Something like that. Or maybe I draw it in and it's a whole lot bigger. And I'm like, okay, I've obviously typed something in incorrectly. I've typed in 11 instead of 1, or I've typed in 100 instead of 10 type of thing. So it's a nice double check for you. The auto number field, that's something you can use for as you're creating features to just automatically set up an ID number for you. It doesn't let you, like, as you add new features, and if you delete one and you add a new one, it's not going to reuse that number. So it's, in my opinion, it's more useful whenever you're doing like adding a whole bunch of features really quickly and it just auto fills in the number. Otherwise, I like to just fill in the number manually for most of the things I'm doing, because I'm normally when I'm helping people, I'm helping with something that's already been established and we're just updating existing data. But if you're starting brand new, the auto number can be handy. It'll zip through things really fast. You can also use it for, like, if you're doing a work order layer, to automatically fill in the next work order number for you, things like that. So it can be handy. The auto area search results, you could use that to auto fill in. If I actually look at my address layer, we can add like a zip code. And then if we do auto area search and choose zip codes, this will automatically fill in the zip code based on the zip code layer. Hit OK, and close, do a redraw. And then you can see on the left there, or if we open it up, there's our zip code automatically filled in. So that can be super handy for filling in your townships, your zip codes, even the county. Like if you're like a Batesville that's between two counties, you could have that set up so that it automatically filled in, just so then you knew when you placed a meter or valve or some feature, you'd know which side of the county line it is. So I think they're putting the hook on me here to pull me off. So I think we're ready to go to the next, let's go to the break, and then we'll start the next section. Displayed it wrong. There we go.